Well, Browns fans, the day is finally here. Cleveland Browns training camp gets started today. I don't know about you. I still get those back to school jitters. It's
You
a
know
sign
about
football
me.
is just around the corner. I mean, I know about you, Megs. I'm saying
You know about me.
I don't know about all our listeners. I don't know how they feel this time of year, but I certainly get those jitters. I'm excited. Hopefully, you're excited as well. Make sure you hit the subscribe button to this channel if you haven't done so already. We'll have you covered. This is like I think a ceremonious beginning to our in season coverage. So we'll have you covered all season long. More episodes of these conversations, this podcast, and obviously all of our written content over at si.com/NFL/Browns. So find us there, find us here, hit subscribe, like the podcast, comment, share it with a friend. We appreciate any support you can provide. Megs, yeah, it's an exciting time, man. Like training camp gets kicked off, and all of a sudden football is back in our everyday life again, and it's a bittersweet thing on some level because it's like, hey, our lives are officially over now. But at the same time, it's football, so what's not to like?
It's football season. It's funny because it's like that like false start kind of a thing where it's like, all right, football's back, and we get so excited, and then like practice and then preseason games. But I'm enough of a football nerd to get like super excited about that. Like I'll watch every snap of the Hall of Fame game. Like I get locked into all that stuff. So I don't know.
You're a degenerate if you're watching the Hall of Fame game. That's all.
Well, I'm a degenerate if I'm betting on the Hall of Fame game, which you can use your imagination.
Don't bet on preseason games, Megs. That's the worst thing you can do. Don't do it. Just don't do it to yourself.
No, we got to do it. Maybe just a sprinkle, just because a sprinkle to get hot. You know, Jim Harbaugh is not going to lose that football game. Just throwing that out there. So
that's wild that Jim Harbaugh's taking it that seriously, but you're probably right about that. So no, listen. What I will say too is what's interesting with training camp is I'm always like super excited now. First week goes by, second week goes by, and by like that second preseason game, I'm like, all right, is the season here yet? Yeah. Come on. Like I'm ready. Like it's crazy how like there's all this excitement and you realize like training camp is still like over a month away from the season actually beginning and meaningful football being played. But there'll be a lot to talk about, especially with this Browns team before that, because a lot of position battles are out, a lot of different groups that have to kind of find their identity. Quarterback, obviously chief among them. We'll talk more about some of our favorite non-quarterback storylines here a little bit later in the show. We're also going to predict the 53-man roster today. Megs and I have a little bit of different outlooks on how this thing could sort of shake out when cut down day comes. But we teased it in last week's episode, Megs, the idea that the Browns maybe need to go find themselves another running back at some point. You brought up an interesting name that I'm going to let you have the floor on, but what did you sort of have in mind here in terms of a guy that maybe they could look to?
Yeah, one of the names.
And this all centers around, of course, like the Quinshon Judkins stuff. We're assuming he might get suspended, that type of thing.
Yes, assuming he does get suspended, and the Browns find themselves in that running back market again, and in that running back free agent world again. A name that popped up, an old friend of the Cleveland Browns, D'Ernest Johnson. As a potential. Now, he wasn't ever a Pro Bowler or superstar for the Cleveland Browns, but you remember back to 2020, 2021, where he kind of made, he had a couple nights. The one night that stands out to everybody is that Broncos game where he rushed for over 100 yards. And that was in that 2021 season where he played in all 17 games, had 100 carries on the year, finished with 534 yards and 3 touchdowns, carried the ball 24 times for a first down. And he was kind of that third down option for the Browns. He was kind of that change up to Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, right? When you're still getting 100 carries in that backfield, you're doing something right. And he was, so that was a name, Spence, that popped up on my little bit of research that I did. Like, hey, this could be somebody. He's 29 years old now, coming off a couple years in Jacksonville. Might want to pick up the phone and call an old friend to see if that might make sense to kind of repair that hole.
Yeah, listen, I think what's interesting, like I like the idea there. D'Ernest Johnson, I think, was a guy who always had like some potential to give you something, and then that one season that you bring up in 2021 is like his one season. Like he went to Jacksonville a couple years later, never had more than 143 yards, never had more than 40 carries. Like it just never the potential that was in there that the Browns kind of tapped into just never really sort of came to fruition, if you will, in a meaningful way with other teams essentially. So yeah, like I don't hate it. I don't think it's the end of the world. I wonder if there's some better names out there that I'd be more interested in. First of
So
all,
that's the other part of it.
I'll say
That's the
this.
other part of it.
John Kelly Jr., who the Browns always seem to circle back to at some point, he's still out there. But I say that to cheek. What like some names that intrigue me are like somebody like Jamal Williams, who's still a free agent somehow. Last year was with the Saints. A couple years ago, led the league in rushing touchdowns. Gus Edwards is a guy who's still out there, obviously. Former Baltimore Raven. And
Former Charger too, right? He went to the Chargers,
he was with the Chargers most recently. And even last year, a guy from last year, Deontay Foreman, who I actually was really excited about the Browns bringing in last year. I felt like that was a good sort of change of pace guy, more of like your power back that could get it in at the goal line. He's potentially still out there, and there's the relationship there. So there's a couple other names that also come to mind. I like the idea. Like, I love that people are sort of gravitating towards like, hey, let's try to rekindle this thing with Dearness Johnson. But right now, I think the Browns are sort of reserved to, we're just going to sort of stay put. Until more is known about the legalities of the Quinshon Judkins situation. But this is this whole thing is a mess. It's the legal stuff. It's his contract, which he's obviously cost himself some guaranteed money with all these second round picks signing now. Most of them are getting fully guaranteed
for all guaranteed money, which is shocking.
And the guy before and after Quinshon was taken, they both got guaranteed money. So he'd be in line to get it. Probably not going to get it now. And so that sort of complicates matters as well, because the Browns probably aren't going to sign that deal with him or offer him the deal or whatever, come back to the table until they know what his legal situation looks like. Ultimately, what I would say, though, Megs, is like, if they add a running back, I would probably still go into this entire camp experience or whatever time maybe he would join the team, assuming that guy just gets cut. And this is maybe a tease or a spoiler for my 53-man roster. I only got to keep with 3 running backs. I'll tell you that right now. So I just feel that they will, like, it would be kind of like a camp body, and that would be about it. But that's just my thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, I think that is kind of spot on, and really too, like, I should have acknowledged it before, kind of going through it and explaining it, but like the cupboard's pretty bare in the running back world. I know that's kind of what we talked about last week. It's not like you're choosing between, Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry, right? Like you are kind of fishing in an empty pond here. So an option there that kind of sparked my interest. Maybe I was just excited from that one night in Cleveland where he rushed. Was that Thursday Night Football? I think it might.
Dude, like I don't think it's a terrible idea to like try to re-kick the tires on somebody.
But you're right. But Jerm, you're right though, because it's like this guy. This is a cut candidate. Like it is a camp body.
The big thing for me is like anybody who you're adding off that market that we just kind of rattled off. And then listen, like I said, I think Edwards, Jamal Williams, both sort of intriguing names. Anybody you're adding, it's just kind of like, let's bring them in and see what happens here. I don't know that anybody is expecting any of those guys to be like legitimate contributors on this team. And that's my larger point. Like I think the Quinshon situation more so, unless he gets hurt or he just like doesn't care, which that's not something that I think Pierre strongly, I would say what describes Pierre Strong. To me, it just makes me think Pierre Strong's probably a lock to make this team. At least on the initial 53, because like he's a guy that's been here, and I think he's shown some in moments that he can sort of contribute. So that's more so what it meant to me than like, oh, what's out there that they can maybe add to bolster this running back room, and maybe it's a guy that makes the team. But anyway,
I would also add that like I don't know that and I'm certainly not putting you on the spot, but like I don't know many people know how this Quinshon thing is going to shake out, because it is so complex, because he doesn't have a contract, right? He isn't signed to Cleveland Browns, and you don't know the seriousness of the actual allegations. Like, we talk football first, but like, what if it's worse, that more stuff comes out or whatever it may be? And the precedent that unfortunately we saw last year with Mike Hall was that it's like 6-game suspension from the NFL.
I think he got 5. I think
he got 5.
I think he ended up with 5 when it was all said and done. It was kind of weird because he had spent like a number of weeks. Yeah, he ended up getting 5 games. He spent like the first 4 of those weeks like on the commissioner's exempt list, so he wasn't
Yeah.
playing anyway. So they kind of did it as like time served, and then he just
Mhm.
missed 1 extra game. But it ended up being 5, which is kind of different than like the NFL sort of policy on this is usually like 6 is the standard for like a first offense. So it was like 1 game less than that, I guess. So I don't know. Like you said, a lot still has to happen. When Evan Stefanski gets asked about this on Wednesday, first day of training camp,
What do you think his response is going to be?
he's gonna give you the answer I just gave you. He's gonna say we gotta let the legal process play out, and so that's what it's gonna be. But yeah, like I admire Browns fans connecting dots on like, hey, let's see if there's something there in this free agent market. I just don't know if it's an addition of any sort of significance for this team, especially when they drafted 2 running backs and at some point, I'm imagining they think Quinshon's going to be back, even if he misses, say, the first 5 or 6 games or whatever it's going to be. But I am anticipating, by the way, that he does get a suspension in some capacity. That might be jumping the gun. Generally, I feel like these things end, and even if he settles it, even if he doesn't get found, I guess if he doesn't get found guilty, then there won't be a suspension. But if it's settled or something along those, because if I would imagine he wants this to be wrapped up as quick as possible. So if he just settles it, I think that just kind of like paves the way for the league to be like, all right, well, personal conduct policy, here's 5 games, and that's probably what it's going to be.
Yeah, no, there's so much to it, and like ultimately, you can't lose sight of the fact that if he is guilty or whatever, like that's the main concern. But all the other stuff, while being secondary, is like just so unfortunate. And then, like the Browns part about this is that like Nick Chubb, and I said this last week, signed like a week before, and it's like, of course, right? Like they would have made they would have righted all the wrongs and like, hey, dude, come on back. But no, of course not, because why is that? Because it's the Cleveland Browns.
And for the first time in like 3 off seasons, Kareem Hunt is actually on a roster right now, so it's not like you can bring Kareem Hunt back. Because I think that would have been, if he had been available, that would have been like, oh, okay, easy. Yeah, like bring Kareem Hunt back. Like, sign me up for that. He was once again a touchdown vulture last year, just stealing all the touchdowns on the Kansas City Chiefs. So, listen, I think there's, like, we'll see how it plays out. I do think they'll probably add somebody at some point. I don't know that it's going to be anything of significance where like the guys should be expected to make the roster.
Yeah.
Moving ahead here, and this is sort of unrelated to training camp specifically, but Jimmy Haslam has a podcast like everybody else in the world. And on this for basically to like help get people like acclimated to the new stadium they're doing and all that, he started this podcast where he's on and talks about all the projects and everything they're doing. And it's called the Building Brownstown podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially there was some controversy on Tuesday, a little bit at least, over his comments on how much parking was going to be at the stadium. He estimated it out to be like 12,000 to 14,000, and people were sort of shocked by the low amount when you're building a stadium that's going to hold like 60,000 people. So quite interesting. Like my first thought is like, that doesn't sound viable, because it's like, when I think about the Browns playing downtown, people park in multiple places and then just can walk to the stadium, right? Like the Muni lot's one, but you can just park in like a garage and then walk over. That's part of the experience and with the stadium downtown. So I'm kind of like, where's all this other parking going to come from? But then I got talking to somebody, and what I find interesting is like, is there an opportunity here? You've been to the airport before, like some of those lots that you like pay for like overnight parking that are like off the airport, and then they like shuttle you there. Like they could make a killing. They could be like, hey, we'll like, on game days we'll rent out like all of our available spaces for like $100 a pop or something like that, and just make bank off of you. There's probably going to be some other local places that put garages up or whatever. The idea is like, I interpreted this as so much parking around like immediately outside the stadium there's going to be, but that there will be more opportunities for parking to arise in the area. And that's the whole point of this project, is like, we're going to inject some life into Brook Park and get people like investing and buying into the whole facility and complex and shopping center that we're building.
Okay, so interesting. So as you were talking here, I was just kind of clicking through and researching. Guess how many parking spots the parking capacity is for AT&T Stadium?
I'm gonna guess it's probably in that same range
12
because
12,000
okay,
12,000
right.
lots.
Because
Okay, the park.
well, Jimmy Haslam has modeled so much of all this future Brown stuff off of what the Cowboys do.
Yep. And the parking capacity for Chiefs Stadium, GEHA Field at Arrowhead, whatever the hell, that capacity of the stadium is 76,000 people. They have parking for 19,000 cars. The last one is the Vikings' brand new stadium, right, which is going to be kind of the model of the Browns Stadium. Capacity for 66,000 on game day, 72,000 for special events, has 20,000 parking spaces within a 20-minute walk of the stadium, according to Google on all fronts there. So, yeah, while at the start, you texted me right away and was like, hey, this is some people are freaking out. And I didn't form an opinion on it. And it seems like it's kind of in line with what you kind of see elsewhere. But the part is like when they do the aerial shots of Jerry's World, AT&T Stadium, or even the Chiefs games, like it looks like there's parking for miles and miles and miles. But it seems to be like, hey, that's kind of par for the course.
What's interesting too is like you got to think people carpool together to these games to save money. Like there are going to be groups of people that show up to games together. It's not just, you don't need 60,000 individual spots for every single person that's coming to the stadium. So that's fair. I think one of the most fascinating things that's going to come out of this is like how the tailgating experience gets replicated because and that's where I sympathize with fans and like my game day experience is going to be totally different. People love the Muni lot. It can be sort of it's this legendary or it's this thing of like folklore, right? Like the stories from the Muni lot. How do you replicate that somewhere else? And is that going to be something that still sort of carries on? So I'm fascinated to see like how the tailgating situation will look in these surrounding lots and if the Browns lean into that or they just kind of let the fans figure out where they want it to be. But that's something that I'm definitely interested in sort of seeing more, learning more about as the stadium project gets unfurled.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a lot. I mean, we've never had a lot that holds, potentially enough cars to seat 40,000 people. You add 4-person to a car, you're going to be in good shape. I know not everybody does that, but like they could be better. It could be much better of a tailgating experience where everyone's together and you don't have, people on the west end of the flat. Like my buddies tailgate in the flats, other buddies tailgate at the Muni lot. Others go to the bars right downtown, and like all of those things are at least a 20-minute walk apart. Now everyone's going to be together, right? You're going to have sections certainly, but like maybe they do have a Muni section or whatever it may be. I don't know. It's going to be interesting, and I think that you let the people figure it out and see what it becomes, because I think it could be pretty darn cool that everyone's in.
I almost do feel like that's the way to go. Is like just let the fans naturally figure it out. Don't force it. Don't be like, hey, Muni Lot 2.0, and it's like in this one section. Like maybe just let the fans kind of figure out what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
But that's I think a piece of this. Whatever this thing's going to be, whatever this thing's going to look like, you got to find a way to somehow bring that over, because that is something that I think. I mean, I know people with Megs who like just go to the Muni lot to tailgate
and go home.
Then, like they go home or they go to the bars downtown and they watch the game.
Yeah,
like
totally.
So being able to find a way to get that, I think, is of the utmost importance for whatever they're going to do. And the nice thing is for people that want to do something like that, the hope is they've talked about like the rapid station that already goes to the airport, but like having to stop across the street. So there should be other ways to get there or get downtown or whatever if you need to. I'm the accommodation of transportation and how they're going to make that work with the freeway right there. Get like traffic wise, getting people off the freeway to the stadium. That's all the stuff that I think is still, I think, over people's heads at this point. Like we've seen the blueprints, we've seen what they're trying to do. We know some of the logistical money stuff. Now the infrastructure piece is what's next, and that plays into the potential new Muni lot and whatever people want to do.
Yeah, and I think I would encourage Browns fans to try to see something from a glass half full perspective. Everything that's been coming out about the Browns, everyone's so down and mad about. Like, it could be cool. Could be a cool new area. And honestly, like listening to, maybe you don't listen to every second of that of Jimmy and D's podcast, but like, I think it's cool to kind of hear the why behind everything, because everyone's so bent out of shape about this whole thing. Jimmy, one of the comments he made was that 30% of the fans, or what was it, 30% or 60% of the fans come from outside of Cuyahoga County, right? Which is really interesting, right? If you're coming from Canton, like my family would, or maybe you're coming from Columbus or wherever you may be coming from, like, saving an extra 20 minutes to get downtown is significant. And especially if they build this right and they add entries and exits to the highways and they make it smooth, that can make the experience that much better for everybody. So really interesting stuff, I thought, from that.
I'm sure we'll continue to learn more about it via that podcast that Jimmy has now is part of. But yeah, man, like it's I don't know. I get the frustrations. I get why people don't want the stadium. It's happening, and I actually think the podcast is a great way, by the way, for them to sort of smooth things over. Like, what better way to, if they can be as transparent as possible and like communicate with the people on a space like that and be like, hey, I'm personable. Here's me, Jimmy Haslam, doing a podcast that I wouldn't normally do, to like explain to you all of our grand plans.
It's actually crazy that they have and you're right that people are so worked up about this.
Yeah.
This is a world-class facility. I've said it the last 6 shows we've done. They're building a world-class facility, and people are mad about it. Well, I don't know. I'm not going to get on.
Listen, we've talked about this before. I get the nostalgic part of it. I get some of these other things. I don't know. Ultimately, this is going to be like what the fans make it.
We need football. We need football.
And let's face it, if the team's winning, that place will be packed and nobody will care.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
We need football back so bad, dude. So bad.
Well, it's coming back, and we have a fun sort of exercise here as we get training camp starts. By the time training camp ends, the Browns will have a 53-man roster set. There'll be some tweaks that happen after that. And I'm kind of interested, like the way the approach that I took because of that fact to my 53-man roster, I think made sort of for this interesting outcome. But Megs and I sat down, took some time out of our busy schedules to predict what we think the 53-man roster is going to be when it's all said and done at the end of training camp, at the end of August, right before the season sort of gets rolling here. Now, but just to clarify, we are both in agreement, Megs and I, that 3 spots are already reserved for kicker Dustin Hopkins, punter Corey Bojorquez, and long snapper Rex Sunahara. So we're not those will not show up on the graphic. I'm telling you that in advance. So we don't bombard our comments and be like, you forgot about the kicker and we're clarifying now that we both agree that all 3 of those guys, unless they get hurt, are making this roster, and that's sort of set in stone. So we knocked 3 out. There's 50 spots left. The exercise from here is about what each of us did with the other 50 spots. Megs, we'll start with your list.
Yeah.
And this is sort of what you came up with in terms of the rest of the roster. 25 on offense. When you do the math here on these numbers, 25 on defense as well. Where was your head sort of at, just like with the way you broke this thing down when it was all said and done? Maybe you can go like offense first, then we can talk about that. We can go defense, but yeah.
I'll go. I'll talk about the big kind of topics, the on the margins, if you will. So starting at quarterback, I'm keeping 3 quarterbacks. And I do think, and I may be, ultimately could be wrong. There seems to be a lot of buzz around Kenny Pickett. I don't see it, especially with the news out of Tennessee last week, or excuse me, a couple days ago, that Will Levis underwent season-ending surgery. If they could become a trade partner, if our friends down in New Orleans could become a trade partner, either Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett is not going to be on this roster, in my opinion, when this thing gets kicked off. So for me, it's Joe Flacco, it's Dylan Gabriel, it's Shedeur Sanders in that order. Then in the running back room, obviously, you read across that board there. That's pretty chalk. And then I got the question mark outside of Quinshon Judkins.
So let me ask you, if Quinshon's suspended, is that spot reserved in your mind for Dearness Johnson? Like, are you sort of reserving that for a fourth running back no matter what?
Yeah, fourth running back. They've kept 4, and the reason being is that's going to have to be a special teams kind of a guy, right? Where and that this is going to kind of make me eat my words as I've talked about Dearness Johnson, being a potential guy like at the age of 29 and the production he's at, like maybe not so much a special teams option, but if Quinshon's not on the roster to start the season. I do think they'll carry 4 running backs. I don't know who that fourth one would be. It's funny that we started talking about Dearness Johnson just 10 minutes ago, and he didn't even make my 53-man roster. So, so it's a fourth running back. I have it as Quinshon right now. Now, in this wide receiver room, I have him keeping 6 guys. Again, you look at the back half of this, I have Jamari Thrash, Michael Woods, the third, and then Luke Floria. Luke Floria is the one. He's the.
I was going to say that was something that struck me is you have Floria as an undrafted rookie making this team.
I have him as a UDFA, again, mostly special teams type of guy, right? He's the wide receiver from Mentor, who played at Kent State and has gotten some love here early on. It could be just some practice. He could become a practice squad guy, but definitely the man in the end of that wide receiver room.
What I think is interesting about that is, like, we know the Browns don't have a lot of options at receiver already. We know the slot receivers, sort of a big question mark. Mm-hmm. And I honestly feel like Floria could be that guy. Like, he could fill that spot, I think, perfectly. So I like that you actually kept him, because I do think he's kind of like a dark horse to make this team, which isn't saying much because the wide receiver room is a mess anyway. Mm-hmm. So I do think there's a legitimate chance he could sneak in there.
And I would also add, too, in the wide receiver room, like, think of it from a big picture perspective, right? This isn't going to be a typical offense where you need to have, all 6 of these guys aren't going to get a lot of playing time, right? Just think of, how Kevin Stefanski runs his offense. It's going to be more tight end heavy. So you're going to have 1, 2, 3 tight ends on the field all at once. That eliminates receivers. So, obviously Jerry's going to be on the field as much as he possibly can. Cedric, when healthy, will be that. And then whoever that third guy is going to be that third option, right? And you have 4 guys here that would be kind of vying for that last spot. And, Floria could potentially be that guy. So moving into the tight end room, I actually wrote a piece the other day, a guy that, I think the Browns should be interested in. He just got released from Seattle, would be Noah Fant. Could be a name to keep your eye on. I don't know if they would spend it, but Fant's obviously now a free agent that would fit amazingly in this offense. But obviously Fannin is the rookie. He's going to play more as a tight end, or excuse me, as like a wide receiver, especially early on in his career. He's big body. He'll develop that blocking edge to him. But obviously David Njoku's become one of the best tight ends in the league. Blake Whiteheart be that third guy. He had he had that big catch against the Steelers in the snow. And then Brendan Bates, I have in parentheses, playing fullback as well. The fullback's going to be back in this offense, whether you like it or not. Having a fourth tight end that'll play that fullback position, I think is certainly on the table there. And then the last section here, the offensive line, it's your typical 5 across the board, and then Zach Zinter, Luke Whippler, Tevin Jenkins, and Cornelius Lucas are your 4 backups there. I think that's pretty chalk, and that you could pretty much write that one in stone.
Yeah, I think the offensive line is absolutely chalk. I actually had the exact same. I'll throw mine up here. I had the exact same group across the offensive line. I think those are your main guys that make this team. You kind of have your second tier, your second group of guys that are your reserves, the guys that are going to go out there and if somebody gets hurt. I think they definitely keep at least 9 offensive linemen because of just the injury issues over the years. Having extra depth there is important. There's a case to be made they could keep 10 though. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they did it just because of all those injuries. but I don't know that there's like a ton. After the guys at the end there, Zach Zinter, Whippler, Tevin Jenkins, Cornelius Lucas, I don't know if there's anybody that you're like, well, that guy's got to make the team for depth purposes. Like, it's just kind of like a crapshoot at that point. So I think the O-line's chalk. I have the exact same tight end group as you, and my biggest reason for that is just like you alluded to. You're going back to Kevin Stefanski's offense, a lot more 12 personnel. You're going to use tight ends a lot more. Back in the early days of his time here, I think his first year here, he kept, 5 tight ends initially, and then it went down to 4 as the season actually started. But I think 4 makes sense there in the grand scheme of things. And then this is where things get interesting for me because my wide receiver room, I have him keeping just 5. I have DeAndre Carter making it. You did not. And that for me is just based off of Carter's going to be your return man. He's going to be your return specialist. Unless, from your perspective, you could always slot Pierre Strong in as your return specialist if you need to as well. And so 5 receivers isn't a ton, but I kind of looked at it as like, well, if you're keeping an extra tight end anyway, like if you're keeping 4 tight ends and you're sort of going to use that position group a little bit more, maybe you keep 1 less wide receiver than maybe usual. We'll see. But the other thing that got sort of dicey here for me is that I kept 4 quarterbacks. And so I didn't want to do this initially, I'm going to be honest. But then I thought about it. And here's the thing. I approached this from a standpoint of the initial cut down, right? Like, I think it's August 30th or whatever. You got to cut the roster down to 53 players. I don't think the Browns go into week 1 with 4 quarterbacks on the roster. But I think Andrew Berry is going to do everything he can. He's going to try his damnedest to move one of these guys before the season starts and not just like cut one. He did the exact same thing last year, right? Like, this is his big strategy. He loves to try to trade a quarterback at that time of year. So I think there's a world where like they find somebody further down the depth chart that they're like, we don't need to keep a 4th running back per se, and we'll just, not that I think Quinshon Judkins is getting cut. We as we clarified, like I have him off on the side as like suspended right now. Like, so I'm assuming he gets suspended, and so then you have the 3 guys there, and so you keep the 4 quarterbacks for at least that initial sort of cut down. Try to trade one of them, and then if something comes to fruition, great. If nothing comes to fruition, then you just end up moving on from whoever you decide. I'd bank on it being Kenny Pickett, and then you kind of go from there with the other quarterbacks sort of in the fold. And so that was my approach to it. Was like, when they initially cut this roster down, I think they do keep the 4, and then week 1 comes around, they'll be down to 3. It's a semantical thing. I tried to sort of cheat the rules here a little bit, but that's why I had him keeping 4, Megs, if that makes sense. Yeah,
it absolutely makes sense. And it's almost, we said the same thing in 2 different ways, you have them making a move later on than I do. I have them making a move earlier in the off season, before the season starts. But I think either way you cut it and either way it shakes. Like, I think we get to the same, we ultimately get to the same spot.
No doubt. I do think some people, like, if they keep all 4 quarterbacks, I think that for some people that would be a very stunning outcome. I know there's been some talk about it, like they might do that, they could do that. I think if it happens, I think it happens the way I laid it out. They do it initially, they try to trade one, they eventually get one off the roster. They're not going to start the season with 4 quarterbacks on this team, in my estimation, but they could use that initial 53-man roster cut down to at least keep them for now and see where they go from there. What do you think about our offensive 53-man roster section? Let us know in the comments section here at Cleveland Browns on SI YouTube. I'll start with the defensive side, Megs. Sure. I have them keeping 4 defensive linemen: Mason Graham, obviously, Mike Hall, Malik Collins, Shelby Harris. I tossed around a couple guys other than Shelby Harris, who's a little older. I tossed around Joan Briggs, so I believe you keep in yours, so we'll get to that here in a second. So ultimately, I settled on those 4. Defensive ends, I got 5 staying: Myles Garrett, Alex Wright, Isaiah McGuire, Joe Tryon, Shrinka. I think are pretty much locks unless something goes crazy wrong. And then Julian Okwara, I have being a 5th guy that makes it, and so you got 9 on the defensive line together. I have them keeping 6 linebackers. Probably some of that stems from most people consider this a weaker group. I actually think there's more depth here than it seems. And the big one on this is like Carson makes sense. Jordan Hicks makes sense. Devin Bush, barring any legal stuff that he's dealing with, makes sense. Jerome Baker, guy they signed this offseason, Cleveland native. I think those 4 seem pretty, standard. Mohamed Diabate, I don't think you can cut him. Like
No,
he was solid last year. He was a
too
good
valuable.
line from a depth standpoint. He makes a lot of sense to keep around. And then Winston Reed. The reason I have 6 linebackers is because I'm keeping Winston Reed because he is such an important piece on the special teams units that I have to keep him on this roster. And then safety, I got the top 4 guys: Grant Delpit, Ronnie Hickman, DeMonte Casey, and Rayshon Jenkins. And then corners, I have 6: Denzel, Martin Emerson Jr., Greg Newsome, Cameron Mitchell, Tony Brown, and then Miles Harden, who was obviously an Andrew Berry pick from a season ago. We'll go to your defensive side of the ball, but obviously you're free to react, Megs, to how I sort of set mine up.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of similarities here, I think. But the one difference is you kept 5 defensive linemen, or excuse me, you kept 4 defensive linemen. I'm putting 5 defensive linemen and 5 linebackers. So it's same across the board. Mason, Mike, Malik, and Shelby. Mine, my extra is Jawan Briggs. Briggs for me came on at the end of last season and really made, like, in my opinion, like an impact on the field, and he could be a guy
point,
that
actually.
like,
I might have messed that one up. And here's the other thing: they might just decide we're going to lean into the young thing and keep Jawan Briggs over a guy like Shelby Harris, who's 34.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
It could be the way. I just, you think back to the end of last season, and that's just the kind of way it was. Briggs was kind of making plays every single week and being exactly what they needed, kind of that plug in the middle, if you will. So I got him staying. I got 5 defensive ends, same crew across the board. Obviously Miles, Alex, Isaiah, Tryon Shoyinka. I'm very intrigued by him, as just we've learned more about him. Young guy. Cute, like 6'5", massive, and could be a really nice piece for him. And they love Julian Okora. So 5 guys there, and then 5 in the linebacker room. Again, the one that I think is a miss by me is who's your last guy?
Winston Reed.
Yeah, Winston Reed. Yeah. Yep, Winston Reed. I think that you made a really good point. Like, I valued the special teams groups in other areas, but not here, because I got Schlesinger, Hicks, Devin Bush, Jerome Baker. None of those guys are special teamers. And then Diabate, it would be potentially there, but also too, like, he's just good. Good, period, end of story. And then in the end, 4 safeties: Grant, Ronnie, DeMonte Casey, and then Rayshon Jenkins. And then the one change up here, this is a personal one. I got 6 corners. I got the same crew: Denzel, Martin, Greg, Cam Mitchell, Tony Brown. And then I put Anthony Kendall on my 53. That is no other reason than Division III football stand up. He played at Baldwin Wallace. So
even though it's John Carroll's supposed biggest rival, that's not true, though. We know who their biggest rival really is.
Yeah, no, it's been like I think our win streak against Baldwin Wallace can drive. I think it's around 16 years now. And I know that although Anthony Kendall is soon. Yes, soon. Well, maybe not.
Well, maybe not. But
maybe not, because Carroll's not in the OAC anymore. But they could never beat us. Doesn't matter if my brother was playing quarterback for them or not. Just could never.
So this is your way of, like, hey, we beat up on you all those years, so here's a tea leaf.
Think of it like this: it's an olive branch. It's a leaf. It is, hey, you made it to the NFL but couldn't beat Carroll. No, it's a joke, because I think awesome player. I never got to play against him. It was 1 year. He was a freshman the year after I graduated. So obviously incredible honor to come from Division III football to make it into the league at all. So I'm hoping he makes this team. I think it'd be pretty cool.
That is our 53-man roster projections pre-training camp, which obviously starts today. Your thoughts, let us know in the comment section here at the Cleveland Browns NSI YouTube channel. You can hit us up on Twitter as well via our handles. Megs, as training camp gets rolling today, we were going to wrap by just sort of, like, we know the quarterback competition is what it is. Everyone's going to be talking about it, of course. Is there a storyline, though, that you're most excited about, intrigued by outside of the quarterback room that you're going to be following along with throughout camp?
Yeah, there's so many. This team, while, like, the outlook isn't awesome, I think there is a handful of really good storylines. And for me, I think that the easy answer here is, what do they do behind Cedric Tillman and Jerry Jeudy at the wide receiver room? Who's getting reps? What are they doing with those reps? And also, too, like, kind of what I mentioned earlier about how this offense is going to look. Like, who's taking advantage of the limited reps in that second tier of guys? That's Deontay Johnson. That's that Luke Floria group. That's Jamari Thrash. That's those cats. Like, who's taking advantage of those reps? And how are they doing? And it's going to be quick. Like, if you have a bad day, you just frankly can't have a bad day, because those reps are going to be limited, and then those spots are going to be tight. So that's where my eyes will be.
Well, and with the wide receiver thing too, like, do they trade for a guy because they don't have the talent there or the experience there that maybe you want? I think that's a great answer. I agree with you too on, like, there's a number of angles you could go here. There's the rookie angle of, like, how much can these guys make an impact? There's just guys who are trying to sort of prove themselves. Ronnie Hickman, like, can he be the free safety that Andrew Berry hasn't been able to find all these years as an undrafted guy too, nonetheless? So there's a ton. I'm gonna be honest though, like, I think the thing that I am really going to be following along with is on the offensive side of the ball specifically is just Dewan Jones and his development, and can he be a foundational piece at left tackle? Will that position work for him? Can he play there, or is he sort of more your right tackle of the future? Also, can he stay healthy? Frankly, because if he does, like, all of a sudden you feel a little bit different about this Browns team, both this year but also beyond, because, hey, now we have maybe a left tackle of the future for this team identified, and you can kind of go from there. So I'm going to be following along with Dewan, like following Dewan this entire training camp, this entire preseason, seeing where he's at, seeing how he looks, seeing how he feels, because that's a big part of, like, what this team's going to do from a decision-making standpoint. We know they might still need a franchise quarterback when this year is done, but they also still need that left tackle spot figured out. And if they figure it out sort of on the fly here, that would be sort of a big thing for the future.
Spence, what happens if they accidentally trip their way into having their franchise quarterback on the roster and their franchise left tackle on the roster with 2 first-round picks going into next year? Like, that wouldn't suck. That'd be pretty damn good.
Yeah, I think those are good answers. What is the storyline outside of the quarterback room, of course, that you're most intrigued to follow throughout the weeks ahead during training camp? We will obviously talk about all of them, most of them, as many of them as we can via this channel. So if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button, follow us, like us, because this is just the beginning of our coverage of the Cleveland Browns this season. Plus, we have press conferences and all that for you as well. It's going to be a ton of fun. So hit that subscribe button. Follow along with us all season long. Head on over to si.com/NFL/Browns for any of our written content. Megs, it's finally here, man.
Dude.
Training camp's here.
Training camp's here, and you guys, our fans, are going to get to be able to see our ugly mugs every day for Let's Freaking Go. We're going to be back to kind of our normal schedule, talking about football, actually, not talking about lists, not talking about rankings, not talking about quarterbacks. We're going to be talking about actual football, man, and it's can't freaking wait. So it's amazing.
Overdue. Yeah,
long overdue. It feels like it always sneaks up out of nowhere, but it also feels like it's been so long. So let's go. It's football season.
We're excited to be able to talk football with you guys coming down the pike here. Until next time, for Anthony Moeglin, I'm Spencer German. And be sure to keep following along with all things Cleveland Browns, the Cleveland Browns on SI.